LaMelo Ball is back. After not playing since January, he comes out and doesn't just do well, he completely dominated en route to what is probably the best overall performance of any player so far in this young season, with 34 points, 8 rebounds, and 11 assists, in a victory over a team that a lot of people came into the season being excited for in the Houston Rockets. Now, while he obviously was supported by a really impressive performance by Tre Mann, this was, for the most part, entirely driven by LaMelo. And that to me is a real embodiment of how the Hornets have operated over the past couple years, carried on the back of LaMelo Ball to whatever success they've had. Unfortunately, LaMelo hasn't been durable enough to hold up to that high amount of responsibility put on him by the Hornets, and since his rookie year, he's only played in more than 51 games once in 2021-22, coincidentally his last All-Star game appearance. Because of all that, LaMelo has to some degree been forgotten about at the top end of East guards, and today we're going to break down LaMelo's game to see what he does well, and finally what he needs to do to firmly re-enter that conversation of top guards in the East. So with all that, let's get right into it. Now, I think we all know what the number one thing that makes LaMelo such an exciting player to watch is, and that is his passing game. He's a great passer, a great playmaker, really has a lot of that Showtime type energy that people want to see, and his court vision is just really, really good. He sees a lot of passes that other people just don't see, and he passes players open and puts the ball in a spot that it needs to be as opposed to where the player is at, and that really is a sign of a very good point guard. Every year he's gotten better at reading the floor, he's gotten better at developing a rapport with the other players on his team. The Hornets have done a solid job for what it's worth in surrounding LaMelo with pieces that he can distribute off of and players he's got good cohesion with. Obviously, he's always worked well with Miles Bridges, but Brandon Miller is the perfect swingman for this offense. If Miller does take a leap this year, as many are suspecting, he can be that ideal play finisher to LaMelo's playmaking. LaMelo has gotten better and better at just understanding his teammates, knowing where to put the ball, and just making guys around him better. This was clearly on display in his first game back this year. Now, you can't take a ton away from a single game sample size, but LaMelo looked even more controlled and precise in this first game back, with 11 assists on just 2 turnovers, which would be the lowest turnover mark per game of his career if he managed to do that consistently, and by far his highest assist total, though they're not probably sustainable numbers. I think that he does take another leap in his distribution skills this year. There's a good chance that he's right back in that top echelon of young point guards in this league, not just in the East. In my eyes, as a pure distributor, the only guard in the East that contends with LaMelo is Tyrese Halliburton. And when you consider LaMelo's total package as a player, not just as a playmaker, but his scoring game as well, it makes him really tough to contend with as one of the best young point guards in the East and the whole NBA. Now, speaking of scoring, let's talk about what we saw from LaMelo versus the Rockets. LaMelo has always been a fairly aggressive offensive player, but last night he took over that mentality that some have always questioned him on, which is if he's an actual winning player or not. While I've always considered the argument that LaMelo isn't a winner as an unfair argument, there hasn't been much fodder to argue against it. Tonight was different. We finally saw that do whatever it takes to win mindset from LaMelo on display from the jump, and it was great to see. What makes him a great offensive threat is he's a solid inside and out player on the offensive end. He's incredibly crafty at getting to the rim, as you can see in some of the highlights here. He has the ability to switch hands midair, get creative in ways that he could finish and use his length well getting to the rim and incorporating his effective handle. As a shooter, he's always been incredibly consistent, around a 35 to 37% three-point shooter, so I don't see that changing. Overall, I don't expect him to take a massive scoring jump this year, especially with the amount of players on his roster now who are bucket getters first. He'll want to be setting those guys up, not doing all the scoring on his own, but like I said, the progress we saw shows me that if he needs to get it done, he's got the confidence and ability to do so. Finally, the last thing I saw last night that encouraged me in LaMelo's game and him making an emphasis to improve overall is his defense. He actually looks surprisingly pretty decent last night. Historically, defense has been one of the biggest concerns for LaMelo. He just did not project as a good defender even through the draft process, and after making it into the league, he really hasn't done all that much to change people's opinion up to this point. He's always had the ability to get some steals here and there, and he's pretty decent in the passing lane, so there's one benefit as far as defense goes, but he's always just lacked the strength to stick with some more powerful guards, and along with that in general, he just hasn't ever been a very locked-in defender. He's had some bad tendencies that allow players to get a shot easier than they probably should, and for that reason he hasn't ever been a great defender. But that all being said, he looked a lot better last night. More hustle plays, more active hands, in position more often, and so on. Now, sure, it would be easy to see a fall off here as the first game of the season, again, isn't an ideal reflection on what he's going to look like throughout the year. Player effort dies down, players get more comfortable, and so on. But from what I saw last night, there is potential to see LaMelo's best defensive season yet, and that bodes well for the Hornets' season-long outlook. So in the end, what do I see this season looking like for LaMelo and the Hornets as a whole? Well, in an ideal world, last night is a sign of things to come. There, however, is the one major thing I haven't touched on yet though, and that is injuries. As I mentioned at the beginning, as LaMelo goes, the Hornets go. If he is healthy, I think the Hornets have a chance to be that team that no one picked to make the playoffs that could slide in. The East is actually quite competitive, all things considered, and it's hard to break into that top group, but the Hornets have the pieces to surprise some people. Bridges, Miller, and so on aren't a bad supporting cast, but they need their star. Without LaMelo, they're going to once again be one of the worst teams in the NBA, in my opinion, and the fact of the matter is they'll once again be picking at the absolute top of the NBA draft if they don't have him. If I were to predict, this is going to be the year for LaMelo. Things are going to come together, he's going to return to his all-star ways, and he's going to be, for the most part, healthy. That being said, while that recipe leads me to believe that they have the potential to outperform, I don't know if I'm yet at the point to predict anything extreme. I think it would take a Herculean season from LaMelo for them to enter in that top tier of the East, but if we continue to see more of what we saw opening night, we could be looking at that season people have been waiting for since his great rookie and sophomore years. And I think the pieces are finally coming together for him to get back on track. So, with all that, that'll conclude this video. If you guys enjoyed, please be sure to like and subscribe, and whether you agree or disagree, let me know down in the comments. I plan on having more and more videos like this, so if you like player profiles and scouting reports, this could be the channel for you. But anyways, thanks again for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hey, thanks again for watching this video. If you like what you saw, go ahead and click on one of these videos here to see more.